Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Let me tell you about the last time I quoted that verse in normal, everyday conversation. It was last month when I went home to visit and help out my parents for a few days. I had just climbed into an Uber at Milwaukee's Mitchell International Airport. For context, the date was January 19th, 2025. As some of you know, in the Midwest, making small talk with any Uber driver who speaks the same language as you is considered a social obligation. So Elijah and I got to talking, mostly about where we and our families were from. Me, Milwaukee, him, Milwaukee, by Cameroon. Then there was a pause in the conversation, and Elijah changed the subject. So I don't know about you, he said, but I am really excited about tomorrow. Again, for context, the date was January 19th, 2025. As a reproductive rights activist, a queer person, and a woman in a public job, I felt my whole body tense. I felt that ancient part of my inner brain activate, the one that governs our fight, flight, and freeze instincts. At that moment, I felt physically less safe than I had the moment before. But then I somehow remembered something Jesus said. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. So I asked Elijah, what are you excited about? I'm excited, he said, because we need change. Change is good. And what followed wasn't talking points. It wasn't a screed. It was a story. His story. Elijah, while moonlighting as an Uber driver, is also a pastor at a small church in North Milwaukee. The neighborhood he serves has been called Little Beirut for the systematic deprivation and violence that sadly shaped the lives of many who live there. And his particular calling? Working with the youth in his congregation and neighborhood who have been pulled into a gang or who are in danger of joining one. He fights every day to keep these kids in schools and in jobs and out of prison and off the streets. This is no small effort in a neighborhood with one of the highest Black incarceration rates in my home state, which has the highest Black incarceration rates in the country. From Elijah's perspective, nothing ever seems to break the cycle for the youth he works with and loves. Nothing seems to change. These kids, he told me, everyone judges them and tells them that they're bad and that they aren't worth anything. But they can't help where they grew up. I try to teach them something different. Do not judge, and you will not be judged, I said. Amen, he said. Every Christian, including and maybe especially pastors, have certain Christian things that we're bad at. Ethics or divine commands we struggle to live up to and to follow. For me, it's this: forgiveness, mercy, loving my enemies, not judging. In other words, when I said, do not judge and you will not be judged, I'm not 100% sure I meant it. Part of my struggle these days with judgment in particular is based on an idea called the paradox of tolerance. Coined by the political philosopher Karl Popper right after World War II, he laid out this problem. A truly tolerant society must retain the right to deny tolerance to those who promote intolerance. In more simple terms, if a society allows too much space for harmful ideas, it risks becoming an intolerant, unjust, unsafe society, especially for minorities and marginalized people. I don't know about you, but for me, it's getting harder not to judge those who tolerate or promote intolerance, hatred, and cruelty. When kids are starving around the world because USAID has no funding, it's hard not to judge. When being a trans person is basically being made illegal, it's hard not to judge. When women suffering pregnancy complications have to be airlifted to states that will actually treat them, risking their lives, it's hard not to judge. When language about climate change is being systematically removed from government websites while Los Angeles still smolders, it's hard not to judge. And as a Christian, I wonder, if we are supposed to care about justice, how can we not judge those who create and perpetuate injustice? If God takes the side of those who are in pain and those who are hurt, how can we not judge those causing pain and hurt? How can we not judge the people who thought all this was a good idea? But how can I judge Elijah, a fellow pastor who has buried way too many people way too young, who has done far more funerals for children than I have? Don't get me wrong, I do not think we are required to tolerate intolerance. I do not think that we are supposed to tolerate injustice or hate or the kind of systematic wounding of already vulnerable people we are witnessing in our society right now. I think Jesus would be pretty mad if we did, given how he taught and loved and died for and as one of the people whose own society barely tolerated. And we are certainly not required to tolerate abuse. This is the passage most frequently cited to women in abusive relationships with their spouses or their partners, encouraging them to stay with the people who harm them. And that drives me mad. That is not what Jesus meant by forgiveness or mercy or turning the other cheek. Do not judge and you will not be judged has long been interpreted as a divine warning that after death, God will judge us in proportion for how much we judged others while we're here. But Jesus' warning not to judge isn't just about God's eventual judgment. It is also a warning that judgment will follow judgment. Pain will follow pain. Hate will follow hate. That being in a cycle of endless mutual judgments feels like hell on earth. Jesus teaches that mercy, finding the way to the story and the person under all of that pain, is the only way to break the cycle, both for others and also for ourselves. Of course, that kind of mercy won't heal those who are truly intolerant. It will not heal those who benefit from intolerance. I think we all know who those people are. But it might heal those who feel that they haven't been tolerated themselves, who feel lost or forgotten by the world. People like Elijah and all the kids he works with. But if nothing else, it will heal us. For Jesus' words are also a warning about what our judgment does to us, what our lack of forgiveness does to us, what our hatred and fear does to us on the inside. Forgiveness, that's releasing us from our anger over what others have done. Mercy, that's releasing us from our judgment about why they have done it. Love of enemy, that's releasing us from hating and fearing those who hurt us or who might hurt us. Righteous anger is indeed part of our calling as Christians. Understanding the causes of injustice is part of our calling as Christians. Dismantling the systems of injustice that cause real, tangible harm are part of our calling as Christians. Of course, Jesus taught us all of that too. But if we walk around as bound up balls of fear and anger and hatred and judgment all the time, all that pain that we carry inside us will kill us before we can win. Jesus is telling us that if we let our enemies live rent-free in our heads, we will burn out on hatred, fear, anger, and suspicion long before our enemies reach us. I have been a pastor, an activist, and a community organizer for 12 years. Ask me how I know. But if you don't believe me, believe Howard Thurman, the spiritual father of the civil rights movement. Jesus, Thurman wrote, rejected hatred. It was not because he lacked the vitality or the strength. It was not because he lacked the incentive. Jesus rejected hatred because he saw that hatred meant death to the mind, death to the spirit, death to communion with his Father. He affirmed life, and hatred was the great denial. Yes, Christians are called to fight the evil in the world out there. But in the process, Thurman says, we cannot let evil carve us out in here. As soon as we let hate and fear govern how we act and feel and think, evil and death have already won. So Jesus' words are not just a call to protect ourselves from all of this anger, fear, and hates that would defeat us before we begin. They are a strategy for how we make compassion, understanding, and love our reality instead, both inside and outside us. Forgiveness is not a concession. Mercy is not admitting defeat or giving in to injustice. Love is not a white flag. Trying to understand, to be a little more curious than judgmental, isn't letting hatred or injustice win. But it is the only way to win the battle for evil on the inside, against the powers and principalities that would govern our hearts and minds. That is the only way to keep them from taking power everywhere. That is perhaps the biggest paradox. The paradox of intolerance we are all faced with in times as scary and exhausting and infuriating as these. As counterintuitive as it is, as hard as it is, as impossible as it is, the only way out of all of this is love. As always, let us follow Jesus, our truth, our life, and our way. Así sea, and amen.